Once you have something that looks reasonably okay, then we can move on to the fun part. And the fun part is adding the subdivision surface modifier and extruding this down. So let's go into object mode here, go to the modifiers tab, add modifier, generate, and subdivision surface. I'll move that up to 2. And then in object mode, I'll go to the overlays and turn on wireframe. I'll turn down the opacity a little bit. And then let's also turn on face orientation, because whenever we make faces, especially on a flat surface, and then connect them all together later, the normals usually end up just all sorts of weird. So we can really easily fix this just by selecting everything in edit mode, going to mesh and normals, and choosing recalculate outside. If it made it all red for you rather than blue, then just click inside in the redo panel, and that'll flip it around to the other way. But now that our normals are fixed, we can go ahead and turn that off in the face orientation. Take this entire thing, hit E to extrude, and extrude it downwards. Then let's indent the eyes and the mouth. I'll select the middle 2 faces on both of the eyes and then hit Ctrl+ to grow the selection. E to extrude that down a bit. And then since I want a loop running around the inside as well, I'll just hit I to inset ever so slightly. And then we can also use Ctrl+R to sharpen it up towards the top a little bit. Just like that. And then if we want to make the corners of the eyes a little bit more sharp, then we can just start to use a crease. I'll turn off my subdiv just for now so I can actually select the correct edges. Let's select those 2, just like that. And then turn subdiv back on for edit mode. Go to the edge menu or Ctrl+E, and then choose edge crease, or use the hotkey Shift-E. Then pull your mouse out a little bit until those sharpen up. Usually I don't want to go all the way to 100%, because that doesn't look that great, but we can move it in a little bit. And you'll see that doesn't really work with the edges above it because these are not creased. But if we also take those edges, Shift-E, and crease those a tad, not all the way to 100%, but until the overlapping problem is gone, then we get a nice crease right in there. And we can also do that with the vertices that are underneath that are also part of that loop. Again, Shift-E, and just crease it up a little bit. Okay, perfect. Let's also do that for the mouth. I'll select all of these faces really quickly just by selecting one side, holding down Control and selecting the other side, not selecting the loop that goes all the way around it because that's our support loop, but taking the inside faces, E to extrude, and I'll move that down. And similar to before, I'll crease this right side. So I'll Alt left click to select so I get that whole loop. You can see that there. And then Shift-E, sharpen that up just a bit. And then I'll add edge loops towards the top and bottom to sharpen that up as well. We won't really be seeing the bottom of the mouth too much because we'll have some teeth in the way, so I won't worry too much about that. But now we can also do the fun part of adding edge loops that go all the way around the cookie. I'll hit Ctrl+R, and then I'll also hit E to make it even. And if it's even with the wrong side, I'll hit F. So Ctrl+R, E, and then F to make a loop that goes all the way around. It's kind of sharpened up. I'll do the same thing here. E for even. Ctrl+R, E for even, slide that in. Ctrl+R, E, and last one, Ctrl+R and E. Now we could also have sharpened this up via creases, but let me Ctrl+Z just to show you the difference here. If I take this edge and I use Shift-E to crease this, of course if I go all the way to 1, then we don't get any sort of smooth transition, and maybe that's what you want, but that's not what I was hoping for. And you could get almost there, but not quite, and have something like that, and that works. But if you right click and shade smooth, you'll see that this on the left just looks much higher quality than this on the right. And you could sharpen this up by adding more subdivision. If I go all the way to level 4, then it looks just as good as on the left. But remember, when we're increasing subdiv levels, we're just exponentially increasing the number of polys that we're using. So it's not really worth it to save a couple edge loops by just massively increasing the number of polygons. So I don't like to use creases for things like that, where I actually really want things to look much higher quality. But for things like the inside of the eye, where it's really not noticeable, then that's a perfect use case for creases. But with that, then we've finished the main part of the shape, and the rest of it is going to be really easy. We just need to make the teeth and the eyes. So I'll go ahead and hide the main cookie, and we'll just make this as a separate object. I'll hit Shift-A, add mesh and plane, F2 in the viewport, and rename this to teeth. Tab to go into edit mode. And let's just line up each of these 4 vertices with the sides of the teeth. Z to go to wireframe view. And we'll need a couple of subdivisions in order for this to work, because it looks like the teeth are not only split down the middle, but also there's a little bit of a curve to them. So Control R, and I'll just add that right in the middle. And then again, Control R above and below that, and we can use this to round them out. And these are just going to be shoved into the face. So if they extrude a little bit past, that's totally okay. Though one thing that I'm thinking is that we want the middle to run straight through the middle of his mouth there, and right now it's not, so I'll add a new edge loop just like so. I'll take the middle one, move that up towards the middle, and kind of move everything else to match. And that's kind of a sharp transition, so maybe I'll move that off to the left, Control R, add another edge loop, and just do the same thing over there. Okay, I think that works just fine, so let's go ahead and solidify this. We could use the solidify modifier, but it's a pretty simple object, so I'll just hit E to extrude and do this in edit mode. Though the normals might be wrong whenever you extrude something from a flat surface, so let's check our face orientation, and that is indeed wrong. So let's select everything, Shift N to fix that, and then let's add our subdivision surface modifier. I'll go ahead and turn off face orientation, and we can sharpen up the sides. Control R, and Control R on the other side. That looks pretty good. We may want to take this center line. I'll use the select shortest path by holding Control, G, Z, move this down a little bit. And actually, I'd really like that to be a sharper transition. So what I'll do is I'll select this whole edge loop, Control B to bevel, scroll up on the mouse wheel once, so we have one edge loop that runs right in the middle there, and then I'll select that portion of it, GZ, then move that down, and now we have a much sharper crease. Okay, I think that works well. So let's hit Tab to go into object mode. Let's unhide our cookie, GZ to move this down into the mouth, and that's looking pretty good. I'll bump up the subdiv to 2, and now let's work on the eyes. So again, I'll hide the cookie, 7 to go to top view, Shift-A, add mesh and plane, F2 to rename this eyes, Tab to go into edit mode, Z to go into wireframe view, and I'll really quickly just outline this shape here. Let's see, though I may as well mimic the same shape that we made for the eye in the cookie itself. Add a couple edge loops in the middle, pull this out. I'm also doing this kind of fast because I think you kind of get the idea already. I don't think I'm showing you anything new from here on out, but I'll add one edge loop here in the middle, pull this down, just like so. And then before we extrude it, let's go ahead and just Shift D, duplicate this over onto the other side, scale that down, and move these into place as well. Again, it's totally okay if it pokes through the rest of the cookie a bit, pokes into his face. Then I'll select everything, E to extrude that down, and then since I already know the normals might be weird, I'm just going to select everything and hit Shift N, which is the hotkey for recalculate normals. But again, you can also get to that through the mesh menu and through the normals menu. All right, now in object mode, I'll hit Control 2, or just full hotkeys at this point. Turn on the cookie, GZ, move those down, and we'll want to sharpen those up a little bit. So let's go ahead and add some edge loops around the top and the bottom. And there we have it. So if we turn off our overlays, we can see the final result. And we might want to select the eyes and do a little bit of tweaking. There's always some last minute tweaking. Change those shapes a little bit. And if you want to add in more dots for the whites of the eyes, then you can absolutely do that as well. And before I forget, let's also take the eyes and the teeth, right click and shade smooth. And then let's parent them to the main part of the cookie by shift selecting the cookie. So it's selected last and is the active object. And then hit Control P and parent to object. You can also go to object, parent, and choose object. Okay, now when we move our cookie around, everything else follows with it. And with that, you've completed the cookie project, which, as it turns out, actually has some pretty interesting topology. If you can make this from scratch, then you can make a lot of things and are solidly in intermediate territory. So if you really want to give yourself a challenge and see if you're there, try doing it on your own. A couple other last minute things that I noticed is I didn't actually indent the lip. So I could just take that vertex, move that down, and that's really all I wanted to do there. But then I'm also noticing that on the eyes, I should have a loop that goes all the way around. Follow my own advice here, because you can see it's getting a little bit pinched. So I'll select all the top faces, eye to inset, and that looks a bit better. So I could spend a lot of time going through and just tweaking all of these different vertices here and try to line everything up just ever so perfectly. But if I do that, that would take all day. So I'll leave that to you if you do want to do it. Also, again, if you want to make the whites of the eyes, then you're welcome to do that, but this is where I'm going to leave it off. Give yourself a big pat on the back if you've finished this project, and if you have, then I'm confident that you're ready for what's next, which is the main exercise of the course. So when you feel ready, head on over to the next chapter, and we'll put your skills to the test.